Alright, so you asked for the waterfall story, you're gonna get it. Hi everybody! Alright, it's time to talk about the waterfall story. So, went to Alaska for a business trip and had some days off, and I went with my boss to a glacier, I don't know what it was called. Anyway, there were huge glaciers in water, and there were huge glaciers on the side of a mountain. And I'll show you some pictures as I go of, just what it looked like in the area. So anyway, there was a glacier up. You could follow a path and you could go look at glaciers on the side of a mountain, and there were little waterfalls and stuff, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And so we walked to the end of the path where you go and to where the glaciers actually start, and there were no signs saying don't go or anything. So I saw this gigantic glacier. It was probably the size of a 3-story house, like 30 feet, 40 feet high, and the size of a house. It was gigantic, and it was way up. It was up there on the path, or not the path, on the glacier. Like the glacier was just flat, and then there was these huge, the stuff you see calve off, and like in TV shows or on a show where the whole chunk goes off and falls off. It was like that. These gigantic ones on the side of the mountain. And the pictures here show it, and I wanted to go see it. I wanted to go up to it. I wanted to touch it. I love to touch things. So I would tell my boss, it's like, it couldn't be more than an hour. It's like right there. And he's like, I don't know. Can you walk on that stuff out there? And I'm like, yeah, look, it's ice. I mean, it's 1,000-year-old ice or whatever, 10,000-year-old ice, of course. And I thought it'd be like an hour there and a half hour back, because it was kind of uphill, but it didn't really look like it. Little did I know, the perspective of distance is so skewed out there. Everything's so big, your mind can't actually judge distance as well. So I'm going to put a picture in right here, and here's the picture of the scene. This is where I was walking. Okay, and so it's pretty gorgeous, and right in the middle, like center shot in the middle, you see kind of a little vertical ice wall, right? Now if you look down towards the bottom, you'll see a tiny little black me kind of halfway down the scene. That's what I look like after walking for like an hour. And my boss took that picture of me from his camera. And so I'll try and put a little arrow or something pointing to it, to where I am, but I had no idea. There's my climb. Woo, daddy. Long climb. And look at those waterfalls. Those are just beautiful. Dead silent up here except for that water. Almost there. That's it. A few hundred more feet. So I had walked for like 2 hours, and it was gorgeous up there. And it was so quiet because no one was there, and there were waterfalls all around me coming down the cliff sides. And it was a big valley, so I wasn't close to the walls, but it was so beautiful. But I just wasn't getting any closer to this ice wall. And it was getting steeper, and the ground was so pretty and beautiful, but as it got steeper, of course, it's ice, and glacier ice is weird. It's kind of like porous and holy, but it's still slippery once it gets steep, and I couldn't keep walking in my tennis shoes any higher. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go this way. I'm gonna cut across and go up to where there wasn't any glaciers, where there wasn't any ice, and it was just dirt, and seemed like it was perfectly parallel with where I wanted to go, the ice, that ice wall. I was like, I'll walk across, and climb up this little thing and then walk across the dirt and the rock, and then I'll be right there and I can just go touch it and then I can come down the mountain. So that was my plan. So it was cool. I walked over there and I walked up, and that even took longer than I thought to get over to the rock. And as I got up there and I'd walked along the edge of the rocks, and it was fine. And then I came to this a part. I don't know if it's an ice waterfall. I guess it was an ice waterfall that hadn't been water in a long time, and it wasn't fully steep. It was, you know, maybe like that, and it wasn't like solid ice like you get out of your freezer. You could like take my foot and I could kick it in, and I could kick it all the way. I could kick it all the way in to my ankle. Like I could kick it in all the way that deep. So my whole foot was in the ice, or my whole foot was actually in the really crumbly ice. And I tested it, I stood on it, and like I said, it wasn't fully steep. And so I grabbed a couple of super jagged, they had these like slate rock, and so it had a couple of them had points, and I grabbed them, I'm like, oh yeah, these are like ice. So, and it was only like 20 feet. And I'm like, 20 feet, that's no big deal. It's right there, I can see the other side. So I go through and I start doing it, and I'm like, oh wow. I got about halfway across, and I'm kick each foot, dig each hand in, and I'm like, I'm really firm, and I keep moving, and I get all the way across, and my hands were starting to get cold, of course from sticking them in the ice because I had no gloves, and my feet were fine, there was no big deal for them, but I was like, as I got all the way across, the wall had curved, it kind of curved this way, and so I couldn't see that there was another ice waterfall until I got almost all the way across. There was another ice waterfall I had to cross, but this ice waterfall was perfectly vertical. There was no nice little leaning so I could stand up. It was like that. And this one was a little shorter, so instead of being 20 feet, it was like, or it looked like 15 feet. Again, there was a curve to it, so I couldn't see where it ended. It ended up being like 25 feet to get all the way across it. But it was vertical, and I had to think about it. I was like, gosh, do I want to go back? I'm like, I was so close to that vertical cliff face that I wanted to touch the ice. I was like, I'm like 50 feet away from it. I'm like, it's like, I thought it was 15 feet. It's like 15 feet. I can handle it. I did it over there. But it was vertical, and as I was going across, this ice was a lot, I couldn't kick in as deep. I could only kick in like to the middle of my toe, the ball of my foot. And so again, if I couldn't kick in, that means I couldn't dig in with my hands. So I start going across, digging in, and it's harder. So I'm having to pound harder with my hand to get the ice, to get the rock to actually dig in. And I'm vertical now, so if I slip, I'm just going to fall. So I get halfway across, and as I get halfway across, I'm starting to go around the corner, and the further I go, the longer it gets. And I keep going and say, okay, it's right there. No, it's right there. Okay, 2 more steps. And and my hands are just frozen solid. I can't feel them anymore. Because I have to work harder to kick my feet into the ice, so my hands are in the ice for a longer period of time each time. And so then, so now I feel like I'm halfway across, and I really am, because now I can see where I'm going to step off the other side. But at this point, my hands are frozen, and I look down. I'm kind of hanging there, and I hadn't looked down. And so these slate rocks, you know, they're sharp, and I'm holding them, right? And they're really sharp. And so, where'd they come from? How big could they be? So I'm going there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I can make it. No problem. And then I look down over my shoulder, and directly below me is a whole field of this slate, jagged rocks facing straight up. It couldn't have been, it was like a cartoon or a movie. These jagged spikes I'm like right over the top of, and I just freaked out. I'm like, oh my gosh, you freaking idiot. What the hell are you doing? So it's like, all right, I can either go back and cross that other waterfall, or I can keep going. It's only like 10 more feet. I'm for sure it's 10 feet now. And so I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna keep going. And so I'm going in, but this time I'm digging in, so I can't feel my hands at all. Thankfully, you'll hear why later, but can't feel my hands, so I'm just pounding in the, got it, and then kicking on my feet, and I get over like, maybe, it seemed like 5 or 6 feet, like I'd go move 4 more feet. It took me like 20 minutes to move 4 feet, Because as I went further, it got harder like ice. So it was harder the more I went. So I can see the edge. It's 4 feet away, but now I can hear water, and I'm like, just a waterfall. And I'm like, where's that coming from? It's right. It sounds like it's right around me. And then I realized it's under me. I'm here. I'm on the face, and there's a waterfall underneath it, and I don't know how thick I'm pounding into. And I'm like, oh shit.